Muted. Hello. I know I look like an elephant, but I have to sound like one. Okay. Before I begin, just a quick missionary update. Pastor had sent it out a little bit late this evening, and so I did send it out, but my brother didn't have time to read it, so I did have a quick read of it. But just essentially, they've moved into a new building. They're inside some sort of commercial space, and they've been renovating that. Looks quite cozy at the moment. They're not finished by the sounds of it, but they've laid down carpet. They've got chairs. I think things have been painted, but there's pictures and stuff in the prayer letter. They're also located, it's actually a good location where they're at because it's a really busy area, and they've been handing out hundreds of tracts each week, and it's been bringing at least one person to the church each week from that, which has been a blessing. And then it's also encouraging other members who haven't been coming to then return to church as well. One of the things he mentioned in there was that there was when they hand out tracts, I don't know if it's a thing, I don't know if it happens here a lot, but over there they must throw their tracts out on the road because they don't want any bar of it. And apparently one guy was riding his bike to the local TAB, and then he stopped and he saw a tract on the floor. He picked it up, he read it, and then pretty much gave himself to Christ. I don't think right there and then, but he ended up giving himself to Christ, came and visited the church, told pastor about it, and then invited him back to his house so that he can then give the gospel to his mum, who's a Catholic. And so he's been, the son's been translating for the mum. I think the son's like 50, 60 years old. So they're not young, so it's a blessing that that's happened. He's mentioned there was a couple of baptisms. I know there was one. I don't know how many more after that, but through that baptism, there were 2 families that came and friends, and so they're asking for prayer for these family and friends who came to witness the baptism for their salvation. He also got into a little bit of a car accident recently as well. He did say that it's nothing bad, but he's got back problems, and apparently I think it's flared up his back problems again, and so he's in a bit of pain at the moment. So I guess the final thing, it's a really interesting read. Please read it. There was a lot to say in there, but the last point I wanted to mention was that there was an officer or some inspector or something who's been interviewing his wife or come to interview his wife, apparently for a gospel tract or a Bible that they gave some agent back in 2019, and apparently this is still been a thing. So they're just praying that that lady doesn't lose her job, and that everything sort of ends well with that situation as well. So the prayer points, I just quickly pulled them out. So some family and friends, pray for the family and friends that came, especially from that baptism, the regular visitors, the returning visitors, also the long-time visitors. For more serving members, they need people like for ushering, song leading, kids Sunday school, kitchen and music ministries. They need more men to become members so that, because you guys know they speak Creole in Mauritius. It's some French. I don't know if it's French or it's a French derivative. I'm a little bit stupid that way. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, it's a version of French, but a bunch of others.
Okay, so it's a little bit of a mixture?
Like
Yeah.
Pidgin French.
Okay. Like what French? Pidgin French?
Kind of like, Pidgin English. Broken.
Yeah.
It's a language, but it's
Yeah, okay.
very similar to
Well, pray for that barrier that he has there, because it's not his he doesn't know the language, and so he wants members who can then translate the teaching and the preaching for that. And then the renovation and gifts towards the renovation. So I think they need things like the projector, and there was a list there, forgive me, but it's all in the prayer letter. Okay. Without further ado, that wasn't Creole. It was probably French, though, isn't it? Adieu. Yeah. All right. We're going to be continuing in the book of Ecclesiastes. Yay! Okay, so a little bit of bad news and a little bit of good news. I I guess the good news is that this will be for you guys anyway, my last speaking engagement for this year, which is only like 15 days, and I'm back here again, so haha. And the bad news is, I was going to try and finish off chapter 7, and I got into page 6, and I'm like, nah, this is not happening. And so we're going to we'll be doing verses 15 to 21, and then the next one will be the final finishing touch. There's just that much stuff to pull out of it. I couldn't shorten it. It was impossible, and I didn't want to go over time either. So hopefully we'll go long enough that it's a blessing, and not too long that people are falling asleep and then getting blessing from sleep. So let's turn to the book of Ecclesiastes. And chapter 7, you guys are probably there already, no? Or no one's turning, that's probably what it is. Okay, Ecclesiastes chapter 7, and we're going to be reading from verses 15 to 21. Okay. All right, let's read the Lord's word. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. Be not righteous over much, neither make thyself overwise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? Be not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time? It is good that thou shouldest take hold of this, yea, also from this withdraw not thine hand, for he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. Wisdom strengtheneth the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city, for there is not a just man upon earth, and doeth good, and sinneth not. Also take no heed unto all the words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. Let's pray. Lord and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time in the book of Ecclesiastes. We thank you for the mountain of knowledge and wisdom, Lord, that we're able to glean from this study, and that we just pray that it continues to be a blessing as we apply it to our lives. In your holy, most precious name, amen. Is there ringing now? Is that better? Can you guys hear the ringing from the... Okay, cool. Okay, so can you just turn the volume down a little bit? Yep. Cool. So yeah, we're doing verses. So we're able to split this chapter up into two sections. So wisdom for better living, which is chapter 7, verses 1 to 14. We've covered that already, and then wisdom for finding balance, which is 15 to 29. So I found a little snippet that pretty much put this. I mean, I gave you a silly analogy with the membrane and hitting it and it loosens, and you got to fix it back up and sort of bring it back to where it needs to be. Still relevant. But I found a little bit of a better one. This kind of explains what we're doing here. It says that in action, as well as in opinion, we should avoid excess, that we should keep the happy mean between intemperance and indifference. So we're going to find many times in this chapter is there's going to be two extremes. It was a bit of a funny study because some of the research I sort of came across, I read it and I thought that doesn't sound right. Why would they come to this conclusion? And yeah, it was interesting. But as you read it in context, and you think, no, it's got to be this. So we'll come across that anyway. But it was definitely a very, very good study. So as we begin Ecclesiastes chapter 7:15, I'll read that verse again. All things have I seen in the days of my vanity. There is a just man that perisheth in his righteousness, and there is a wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. So I guess the first thing, it's saying essentially for us to catch ourselves when we feel offended. We look out and we see that there are people who, we would say that they're righteous. By their fruits, they're good people, they're serving the Lord, and yet their righteousness doesn't, stop them from going through a trial and even death. And we know it through, look at our missionaries. I mean, half of them have cancer, right? And they're dying slowly one by one. And not as a joke, this is the reality. I mean, we just read from the church in Mauritius, and Pastor Surrett, he was doing a good work, but the Lord took him early, right? And then I sit here and I think, I'm not doing half the work this guy's doing, and yet the Lord's blessing me with things. And, I'm going, it just makes you think far out, man. Like, Lord, why'd you choose to take him away and leave someone like me to roam this earth? And even worse, we look out and we see worse people and going, okay, well, how come this person gets to roam the earth and they live long lives? And then you get these righteous people who are working hard, who are godly people, and they go through a trial, they get cancer, something that battles them, that stops them from being able to do what they can do. And you look at it and you think, what's going on? Is this just random? Is this arbitrary? Or is God just, is this God's hand? What's going on? And so we're reminded here that we're not to think of this as strange, or more accurately, unfair, because we do that. We look out and we go, this is unfair. Remember Psalm 73, the prayer of Asaph? Does anyone remember? He's complaining about how he looks out and he sees all the wicked prospering, but then he comes to a point where he goes, you know what, Lord, he's content with what the Lord has for him. He knows that they're going to meet, their maker when it comes time. Justice will be served. And why is he complaining for? He's got the Lord to protect him. I probably butchered that chapter, but read it. It's a very good one. A just man perisheth in his righteousness, a man who has lived a righteous life, one that honors God. His righteousness does not deliver him from calamity or death. Okay, this goes completely against these works-based faiths and religions as well. Then there's the wicked man that prolongeth his life in his wickedness. A man who has lived recklessly, a life that provokes and deserves the justice of both God and men, yet this man is permitted to live a long, unpunished, and secure life. It's unfair. But remember, in the Old Testament, according to the moral government of God, experienced by the Hebrews, the sinner was to suffer adversity, woe, and affliction, and also to be cut off from the group. We see this in the book of Job when his friends accuse him of having some undealt sin in his life, that this is possibly why God is dealing with him so harshly. So sometimes even us, we put rhyme and reason to why we're going through a tribulation. We think, oh, maybe God's trying to remember when we go through a bad time. What do you do? You have your good times and your bad times. But when you go through your bad times, you do what? Consider. You consider. Remember? We consider why. Is it God? Why? What's going on? He talks about them living wickedly, and yet their lives seem to be prolonged, and a life unscathed by their own wickedness and evil deeds. However, the length of days is not always a blessing, and retribution is waiting for this man or that man or whoever beyond the grave. When we look at Hezekiah, who had his days prolonged, remember, nothing good came out of it. He lived a good life, but then those extra, 15 years, didn't need them. He should have just went when the time came, but he wasted those 15 years. So here, Solomon, through his own trials, has learned to look for justice and correction of these men in another life. Not in this one, in another life. When we come and we stand before the Lord. Solomon tells us that he's seen this happen time and time again, and that there is no rhyme or reason for these things except that it is the hand of God. We look at Naboth, who owned the vineyard. Ahab tried to kill him many times, and then Jezebel goes, don't worry, I'll take care of it. She ends up killing Naboth and taking his vineyard. He got tricked by Jezebel. Anyway, read the story. The guy didn't do anything wrong. It was, from what it looked like, he was a good man. He was just doing the right thing. He was tending to his field. He had a property to look after, but somebody else wanted it. Go all the way back to the beginning. We see Abel, who was brutally slaughtered by his brother early in his life. Why? Because God accepted and favored Abel's sacrifice over Cain's. So he got jealous and he killed him in the field. And to add insult to injury, God then protects Cain and preserves him. He puts that mark on his head and says no one is to put a finger on Cain. So his life was prolonged. Not because he was good, but it was by God. It was up to God to do this. So, how does it make you feel when you see this happen? How do you cope with trying to balance this out or make it feel right. The first thing that we do, and I'm pretty sure you could, if you disagree, put your hand up and tell me, give me another answer. But the first thing we do here is we compromise in our conscience, right? We start going, okay, hold on. We start having this inner dialogue in our mind. We're supposed to be having dialogue with the Spirit, with God there. That's where He talks to us and feeds us. But we start going, okay, hold on, and we start compromising in our conscience. And so the next verse says this: be not righteous over much, neither make thyself overwise. Why shouldest thou destroy thyself? Now you think, you're reading and you're going, okay, so he's saying be righteous, but not too much, be a certain level of wise, otherwise you're going to be destroyed. Matthew Henry says this: in the acts of righteousness, govern thyself by the rules of prudence. Remember, a prudent man is one who thinks ahead, he calculates his decisions. Someone who's smart, who takes care in these matters. And be not transported, no, not by a zeal for God, into any intemperate heats or passions, or any practices unbecoming thy character or dangerous to thy interests. So sometimes in doing what we think is good, it is actually causing more harm than it is doing good. We can be overzealous in our observations and judgments of others. We can be very harsh and critical in our disapproval or finding of faults in others. The enforcement of punishments on others beyond what is ruled to be fair. This is someone who's developed a pharisaical spirit, someone who's bitter. They feel like they're doing the Lord's work, but it's doing the opposite. It's called bitterness, contention. We know these people, right? And we've been these people at points of time in our lives, okay? Sometimes we give more credence to the tangible to determine one's current spiritual position, such as the big one, wearing a tie. I've had discussions about this before, attending every service or coming to church twice on a Sunday. If you don't do these things, you're not spiritual. Well, where does the Bible say that? Right? Now, it does, to a degree, it can count in regards to the outward fruit or effect of what that person is going through, and you can go, okay, it could give you an indication, but it's not the final indicator. You cannot determine a person's spiritual life from the clothing that they wear, from not attending all church services. I mean, it's nice if they did, and it's a good proof or evidence, okay, but we cannot come to a conclusion, right? And sometimes we can then be overzealous in these situations and come to all sorts of conclusions. However, we are to manage our zeal for the Lord with godly wisdom. Remember that one. We should be gentle, soft, charitable, but also be tactful and wise as serpents. You can be all those things at the same time. It says, neither make thyself overwise. In Romans chapter 9, we'll quickly read that. In Romans chapter 9 and verse 18 to 21. So Romans chapter 9 verse 18 to 21. Therefore hath he mercy on whom he will have mercy, and whom he will he hardeneth. Thou wilt say then unto me, why doth he yet find fault? For who hath resisted his will? Nay, but, O man, who art thou that repliest against God? Shall the thing formed say to him that formed it, why hast thou made me thus? Hath not the potter power over the clay of the same lump to make one vessel unto honor and another unto dishonor? Don't be wise in your own conceit. Don't put yourself above what God has given to us. Right? In 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 6. And these things, brethren, I have in a figure transferred to myself and to Apollos for your sakes, that ye might learn in us not to think of men above that which is written, that no one of you be puffed up for one against another. So a good principle carried to excess may bring evil results. It is good to reprove those. So to reprove those who offend, it's good. We're told to do that, right? But aren't we also meant to exercise mercy and grace where it's appropriate as well? There's a time and a place, right? We preach behind the pulpits, and when we see it from pastors, they'll preach, grace and mercy, and then they walk away from the pulpit, and some of them are, right? And they don't obey the own scriptures that they preach. I'm not going to go any further with that one, but we're guilty of that as well. We think, oh, Lord, have grace and have mercy upon me. And you turn around to that guy and you think, oh, you've made me angry. You deserve to be punished. Fair? This is what happens. And then, why shouldest thou destroy thyself? Okay, I've got a quote here. A man who professes to be wiser than others, and indeed wiser than providence, incurs the envy and animosity of his fellow men, and will certainly be punished by God for his arrogance and presumption. You will lose your testimony, you will lose your respect amongst wherever you are, your community, the brethren. You could be right, but the spirit in which you conduct yourself, especially when you put yourself above others and you pretend that you're holier than everybody else, that's going to put you in a bad place, in a bad situation. You're going to destroy yourself in terms of your standing or your reputation amongst the people. So, fine. Okay, I'm not going to be righteous. So what am I going to do? Oh no, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to be wicked. I'm going to do wicked things. Be not overmuch wicked, neither be thou foolish. Why shouldest thou die before thy time? So you think, well, hang on. So is he saying we can be wicked but a little bit? Is that what he's saying? Be not overmuch wicked. Don't go to the other extreme and give yourself up to the practice of wickedness. When we see the wicked get away with things, especially when you're in a place of extremes, it's tempting to then go. If that person can do it without consequences, why can't I? I've been there. Okay? I'm sure you guys have been there too. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 1. Because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. Just because God is not dealing with them straight away doesn't mean he's watching them and he's waiting for the right time. Okay, so when you look out to the wicked and you say, oh, they're doing well, nah. They've brought the wrath and anger of God and his eyes are fixed upon them. They're not doing well at all. It looks like it, but just wait. Maybe in this lifetime or maybe at the judgment seat. Either way, they're not in a good place. So just as I mentioned, let's not be confused and think God's saying, oh, you can be wicked a little bit. Steve's had a hard day. He can throw back a couple of beers. Why not? He get his spirits up, go down to the local pub and put some coins in the machine. I'm doing a little bit of wicked. No, that's not what he means. If we look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 to 27, it says, be ye angry and sin not, let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Now you've got to ask yourself, are we being permitted to keep our wrath the whole day long? Is God saying, if you're angry, you're allowed to be angry the whole day, just don't go to sleep with your anger? No, that's not what he said. Because what did he say after that? Neither give place to the devil. Now, if I said to you, the devil's standing right over there, or if I said to you, the devil's sitting right there, what would you do? Would you stay there? Would you just move one chair? You would flee. You'd run. I would run. Slowly, but I would run. Okay? You're not going to stand there and wait. What this verse is saying is, no, we find ourselves in a position of wrath. We stop. Don't go any further, otherwise you're walking yourself into the arms of the devil. Deal with it and get back to where you're supposed to be. Don't hold grudges. That's what that verse is saying. It's the same idea. You might find yourself maybe not in the best of circumstances. Get yourself together. Get back out of that place. Okay, it's not saying go and do wicked or just a little bit, I'll let you, just as a prize. No. He's saying if you're there, get out. He says, neither be thou foolish. When we're living in sin, our actions wreak havoc on our pride. I'm sure we all know someone who proclaims to be saved and is living in sin and you hear them speak. They condemn this person, they condemn that person. They'll give you all the advice in the world. They're living well. They give you wisdom, but all you hear is just a bunch of junk and hypocrisy. Right? If you're walking in the right direction and you hear people like this speaking to you, you can tell straight away. It's foolishness. You'll hear it. The next verse. So what do? Do we go extreme this way? Do we go extreme this way? No. It is good that thou shouldest take hold of this. Yea, also from this withdraw not thine hand, for he that feareth God shall come forth of them all. This verse is referring to the warnings that we've been previously given from verses 15 to 17. We're being advised here not to make a trial of opposite lines of conduct. He's saying, don't go and test this extreme, don't go test this extreme, and then bring them together. And then the thing is, because, to taste the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it is a lie that to experience these things, we could determine, just as the wisdom of this world tells us today and aggressively, that through this experimentation, because again, we all do it, we will find a safe course to traverse. You test this way, oh, that's no good. We test this way, oh, that's no good. You put them together, and you come up with your own path. Right? He's saying, don't do that. Instead, take heed, pay attention to what we've just been told, and learn from them so that we can avoid these extremes. So he's given us these examples, but he's saying, don't go there, go straight. Goes, take them as examples, and just keep pressing forward. And how are we to do this? Only by the fear of God can we have victory in these defining moments of our lives. It is the wisdom that comes from above that preserves us. As Solomon goes on to say in the next verse, in verse 19, wisdom strengtheneth the wise more than 10 mighty men which are in the city. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 32. He that is slow to anger, I love this verse, is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. If you, going through these times, or just in general, if you can control your spirit, if you can control many times we just want to go, oh, let's go this way, or let's go this way. But if you can stay on course, if you can keep, take heed, as Solomon says, he says, to do this is that difficult. It is that difficult that it is better than someone who can take a city. It is better than the trained general, a trained warrior, to go into a city and defeat it. The person who can rule his spirit is better. However, as much as wisdom... Oh, sorry, I just jumped ahead. Oh, here we go. Wisdom strengtheneth the wise. Against such extremes that were just mentioned, it is a guard about him, as well as a guide unto him. It is a defense unto him, as before we've observed previously in the verses in verse 7:12, where wisdom and money were both called a defense. They both had protective attributes and the ability to solve a problem or protect one from harm, but wisdom was by far infinitely more valuable than any riches or amount of money. Remember this, right? Verse 20, for there is not a just man upon earth that doeth good and sinneth not. We are being advised of the necessity and advantage of the counsel given in the previous verses, and even more so that wisdom from above that guides us and keeps us from going down the wrong path. However, as much as wisdom can strengthen a man, it is still not enough to keep him from falling to sin. There's not one thing you can do to stop that from happening. You could be the wisest man in the world and still fall into sin. Even in good, we sin. That's what it says. Even in good, we sin. Okay, and we're talking about in the context of man apart from God. Okay, there are things we can do good for God, but because God enables us to do that, and that's good to Him. But there are things here on this earth apart from God, we can't be good. Nothing that we do is good. Isaiah 64:6a, the beginning part. But we are all as unclean thing, and all our unrighteousness are as filthy rags. All our righteousnesses the things that we do that are good to God are filthy rags. And many of you know what the filthy rags are. They're not, it's actually much worse than the word filthy rags. It's a very dirty, filthy definition, but another time. Wisdom teaches us that no one is faultless, not even men who we hold in high esteem. This wisdom gives us strength to the wise and arms them against the situation where someone says something to you to maybe get a rise out of you, or you take offense or get frustrated with what is said and you become angered by it. The only time man can do good and do it without sin is when we are absent from the fleshly body and present with the Lord. Hebrews chapter 12, 23, to the general assembly in the church of the firstborn, which are written in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of just men made perfect. And the final verse, 21, also take no heed unto all words that are spoken, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. As our teacher, wisdom prompts us to learn how to conduct ourselves when we see the sins of others. Okay, we can learn from other people's mistakes. You know, my kids are at the table. The child goes, I want milk. I say, no, you're not getting milk. You didn't say please. The next one goes, I want milk, please. Learn from the mistake of the first child. So that child gets milk. That's not, okay, it's a little bit unfair for the first one, but you get the idea, right? If you have kids, we've gone through this, right? You learn from the mistakes of others. Wisdom teaches us this. And we should also not be quick to jump to conclusions. We know this verse, James chapter 1, verse 9. I love this verse. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Don't be quick to hear these offenses and hold on to them, but instead we should wink at these times as they didn't happen. Take no heed. Don't set your heart to them. If you can do this, guess who gets to sleep at night? The person who winked at the problem. Become as a deaf person, lest thou hear thy servant curse thee. Don't even go and seek out what other people are saying about you. If people are saying good things, it's going to feed your ego. If people are saying bad things, it's going to get you hyped up. Nothing good's going to come out of it, all right? Instead, approve yourself to God and your conscience. Otherwise, you'll even hear your servants curse thee. Now, I think this is a reference to having your ear open to talebearers. So an example is Proverbs, written by the same author, Proverbs chapter 29, verse 12. If a ruler hearkens to lies, all his servants are wicked. Right? So essentially saying that if you believe what these people are saying, like they're lying to you, and you haven't checked it out, you're just taking it upon hearing it, anyone can make you think anything. And these people are going to make you think that your servants are wicked, or whatever your situation is. I'm sure you've been in a situation, someone has said something, and you find out later, you're like, well, that's not true, that's not what I said. Or it was misinterpreted. It happens all the time. Anyway, you'll hear anything you want to hear. If you have siblings or a family, even a hostile workplace, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's why for me, in situations like this, whenever I hear something that's, I guess, out of place or out of character for someone, I always think to myself, there's got to be another side to the story. Or there's got to be a reason why this person feels offended and thinks that way about me or somebody else. And I think, okay, fine, I'll either address the issue, and if I'm not going to address the issue, I'll go to sleep. But I'm not going to dwell on it. Okay? Anyway, this is the wisdom of Solomon. I hope you guys were able to take something away from that. And the final part will be next time. Let's pray.